Welcome to Reach for Healing. I'm Rebecca, and this is the first in a series of readings on the writings of Florence Scovel Shinn. Last week, I did a talk on the wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn, and it was so well received, and I got so much good feedback on it. I thought it might be fun to do some brief readings and just talk about some of the lessons contained within her writings. Florence Scovel Shinn, of course, was a New Thought teacher, a metaphysical teacher in the early 20th century. And her writings, although small in number, she only wrote three books, and a fourth book was compiled after her death in 1940. But the impact of her wisdom and those writings have been felt throughout the world and heavily in the United States, even as late as the 21st century. Louise Hay, one of the most beloved New Thought teachers in the world, was heavily influenced by the writings of Florence Scovel Shinn. And so tonight I'm going to take a short reading from her book. This is the complete works. It's got all four of her books. I'm going to take a brief reading from The Game of Life and How to Play It. And it's from the chapter on non-resistance. And she starts with, or the reading I'm going to do starts with a quote. Bless your enemy, and you rob them of their ammunition. Their arrows will be transmuted or changed into blessings. This law is true of nations as well as individuals. Bless a nation. Send love and goodwill to every inhabitant, and it is robbed of its power to harm. Imagine if that was our national policy instead of sending bombs and soldiers. But I digress. We can only get the right idea of non resistance through spiritual understanding. My students have often said, I don't want to be a doormat. And I tell them, when you use non resistance with wisdom, no one will ever be able to walk over you. One day, I was impatiently waiting for an important telephone call. I resisted every call that came in and made no outgoing calls myself, reasoning that it might interfere with the one I was waiting for. Instead of knowing that divine ideas never conflict and that the call would come in at the divine, perfect right time, and leaving it to the infinite intelligence to arrange, I micromanaged things myself. I made the battle mine. I remained tense and anxious. The phone did not ring for almost an hour. I looked down at the phone and found that the receiver had been off that whole time, and the phone then was disconnected. Now, in the early 20th century, if you left your phone off the hook for a long time, the operator took it offline. My anxiety, fear, and belief in interference had brought on a total eclipse of the telephone. Realizing what I had done, I began to bless the situation at once, calling it a success and affirming I cannot lose a call that belongs to me by divine right. I am under grace and not under law. A friend of mine rushed out to the nearest telephone to notify the company to reconnect it. My phone was connected shortly thereafter, and 2 minutes later, I received a very important phone call, and about an hour after that, the one I had been waiting for. Indeed, our ships come in over a calm sea. As long as we resist a situation, we will have it with us. If we run away from it, it will run after us. I told this to a woman one day, and she told me how true that is. I was unhappy at home. I disliked my mother, who was critical and domineering. So I ran away and was married, but I married my mother. For my husband was exactly like my mother, and I had the same situation to face once again. This means that we need to look our adversity in the eye. Mrs. Shinn wrote the following quote: agree with thine adversary quickly. We must look at adverse situations and agree or convince ourselves that it is good. We must be undisturbed by them. When we are undisturbed by them and view them as part of the good that is ours, they will fall away from us. None of these things move me is a wonderful affirmation when we're in the midst of a situation that seems to be very aggravating. The inharmonious situation does come from some inharmony within ourselves. When there is in us no emotional response to it, it will fade away and fall away from our path. So you see, the work is always our own. inner work to do. And I have a little bit of a story about non-resistance that I want to share. So, about a year and a half ago, maybe a little less, I saw a job come up within the larger organization that I work for, and I applied for it. And a very good friend of mine who also works in the same organization, he applied for it as well. And we both went through the motions, submitted all our paperwork, and he had gotten a call for an interview, which I didn't know about. By the time he was called for his second interview, he felt that he ought to let me know because I think I had said something that I hadn't heard from them yet, and I was wondering what was going on. So he let me know that he had been called for not just the first interview, but the second interview, and he actually ended up going on and getting the job. And I said to him, he was concerned, he felt bad. And I said, "This job is not my job. If it was my job, no one could take it from me. So it must not be my job." And I truly felt that way. And I've come to that by studying the writings of Florence Scovel Shinn and others and learning about this concept of non-resistance. And I truly believe that that job wasn't mine. And it's funny because he and I still stay in contact, pretty regular contact, and he tells me things about the new position and whatnot. And the more he tells me about it, the more thankful I am that I didn't try really hard to, that I didn't get that job, that I didn't do anything to try to make that happen. It clearly wasn't a job for me. And so the universe knew this, and that's why I didn't even get the first interview. I have learned over the years of studying spiritual metaphysics to trust these things that happen because truly, when you walk the spiritual path, what's yours cannot be taken from you. And what's not yours, you don't want. And when we live in that knowing, life is much easier. When we try to force a situation, sometimes we can force things to happen, not so much in a job like I was talking about, but oftentimes in relationships, people will force things. They will force they will pursue someone and almost emotionally blackmail them to go out with them or stay with them. That never works. If this relationship is going to work for you, it should work with ease and effortlessness. If you have to force things and manipulate, if you have to manipulate people and manipulate things, it's not working and there's a reason. Non-resistance is not only a path to peace, it's a path to happiness. Because when you walk the non-resistant path, when you stay in the knowing and the calm assurance that what's yours will come to you over a calm sea, you don't ever have to get fussed up like she talked about waiting for that phone call. You don't ever have to get anxious. You don't ever have to be in worry. What's yours will come over a calm sea under grace and in a perfect way. It's a much more peaceful way to live, and it makes things a lot easier. In the job situation that I shared with you, when it first all came to be, I didn't miss a beat. I knew that I was receiving a very important message from the infinite intelligence. That was not my job, and I was okay with it. I didn't bat an eye or miss a beat. And what has happened since then is my own job, where I stayed, has gotten even better. So I know from personal experience of what I'm speaking. I know that this is a wonderful way to be. It's a much more healthy way to be, and it works. So I share that with you in the hopes that it resonates with you on some level. And again, encourage you to investigate if you haven't begun to read the writings of Florence Scovel Shinn. It's a great read. It's an easy read, and you can read snippets of it, short snippets of it, and put it down and then come back to it later. So hope you'll come back for our next reading from Florence Scovel Shinn's writings. And until then, take care.